One of the things I would comment, I mean, some of the people who appeared in the film seem to treat Golden Dawn as if it was just one more example of the far right that is developing in Europe. But I think they're very distinctive in some ways because they were closer to neo-Nazis in the sense of having paramilitary groups that were going out and attacking people, immigrants, activists, and so on and so forth. So in this respect, they're sort of I mean, they're not the run-of-the-mill far-right sort of group that just talks against immigrants and so on and so forth. They were a much more sort of extreme version, so much so that many of the parties of the far-right in Europe, even they don't want to associate with them.
Yeah, I think sometimes people think they're like the Tea Party, you know, but they're not. I mean, they're quite violent and have these deep roots that go back to the Nazi Party. Anybody else want to say something about where they are?
I would like a little bit to address something that some of the Greek community spokespeople said in the film about the relationship of Samaras and the party New Democracy to Golden Dawn, which I think needs to be explored a little bit further. It is absolutely not true that Samaras went after New Democracy because he was trying to defend Greece or because he was concerned about the racism in Greece. The government of Samaras was very much responsible in creating the climate through which the New Democracy was able to by using racism, to get to that 7%, you know. Not only that, but there was the top aide of Samaras, the top aide, like, thank you, who was, he was videotaped by Kassidiaris, one of the Golden Dawn MPs.
The guy who punched the deputy in the film.
Exactly, the guy who threw the glass of water and punched the Communist Party representative on TV. He had made a video that was later leaked when he was blackmailing the government of Samaras, basically after the government of Samaras, you know, was forced by a massive anti-fascist movement to take action against Golden Dawn after Pavlos Fisas, the hip-hop artist, was murdered. So I think we need to really put an end to that fairy tale that New Democracy had any intent to either be anti-racist or to defend democracy.
Yeah. First of all, I need to recover from seeing my face on the screen.
We all do.
And I guess you too, right? Sorry about that. Congratulations to Richard for what you did, and all of you brave enough to do so, because immediately after some of the scenes were on YouTube, many things happened. It was a developing escalation of threats to all of us here, from what I see. And also in Greece, some of us traveled, but that was it. This is it. They don't exist anymore in the public sphere at the moment, of course, right? You have to be alert all the time, as Iannis said very well, and the others. As concerned the European or the particularity of the Greek Golden Dawn, I agree, of course, that it is a particularity. At the same time, this is the whole theme of the new far right, that they're trying to redefine the relationship between the nation and the state. Greece now, that the Greek state suffers, of course, but they're trying to develop a new theory regarding the nation. And that's why I think, to some extent, it has some appeal to the Greek Americans, because the majority of Greek Americans, especially the early generations that came before the 40s or around the 50s, they didn't have any concept of the Greek state. Don't forget that most of the islands succeeded to Greece after the Second World War, after 45 or 1947. In some cases, islands from the Ionian Sea. Macedonia itself, right? Saloniki was liberated by the Turks, from the Turks, by the Greek army, and a lot of Greek Americans fought that war. They left the States and they went to fight the Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913 that liberated Saloniki. So that means that overall, for a long time, there was no concept of the state, but there was a great sense of the nation. So if it has some appeal to some Greek Americans, it is because most of us here, we still have this notion of Greekness, which is related to the nation and not the state. And on the other hand, what I keep saying since the beginning, they don't have to have an organization here. A lot of them, a lot of the Neo-Nazis, I mean ideologically at least, not the physical part, they are within the associations. I disagree with what Dan said, that Kirikas every weekly they say something against Golden Dawn. On the contrary, they're great supporters because the paper follow the line that Samaras and the previous government of New Democracy and PASOK had, the theory of the two far sides. So on one hand, they put the Golden Dawn, and on the other hand, they put Syriza. That was the line for a long time, and it took a long time the Greek people to realize that that was a mistake. That was really fault. So I don't think so that the fear is from the particular members that they come to our events and they create all these altercations. The theme is that those who hold various positions within the community, they behave ideologically, at least, according to Golden Dawn philosophies.
Personally, I was not at all surprised at those Greek Americans that in some way were sympathetic to Golden Dawn. I worked my way through college and graduate school in a job that I called a little piece of hell. I was a waitress in a Greek diner. And it bothered the owner tremendously that my Greek was better than his, and the kitchen couldn't curse me because I knew what they were saying. But I would overhear conversations that were so anti-Semitic. Now, most of these, the diner owners, came over, I would say, after the years of the Civil War, and many of them carried with them whatever their prejudices were from Greece. Their children, in many ways, have absorbed this. I did not find it surprising at all that there is a contingency among Greek Americans that feel that Golden Dawn is doing the right thing.
Can I add something to that? Yes, in response to what Marcia said, and very much in response also to what Carlouchos mentioned in the film, something about this effort trying to locate within the culture, in this case of Greek culture, evil or good, like the potential for resistance or potential for fascism. And it's something, as it's probably already coming up, that fascism is not culturally specific. Therefore, it's not about the good Greeks and the memories. Probably, if one wants to go back to resistance alone, one can also go back to the Greeks and the memories of collaborators and the memories of very much people who worked alongside the Nazis and they were hardly persecuted afterwards. So it is important to understand there is nothing inherent in Greek culture or in German culture or in Turkish culture and so forth that is liberal or conservative or so forth. So, and as we see, precisely because of the economic crisis, precisely because of what people go through right now, we have the emergence of these phenomena. On the other side, and that's something we should pay attention and think more deeply, and something that Panouria actually mentioned in the film, drawing attention to countries that they do not suffer, at least not to the extent that Greece or other countries do from the economic crisis right now, and still phenomena such as this, racism, anti-Semitism, are prevalent. So we have to think a little harder, why is that the case? And I'll leave the question here, we can probably come back to that.
Well, excuse me, I completely agree with Despina. It's not simply a Greek issue, but saying that we do have to focus on what has gone on in Greece the last several years, the economic crisis. Also, this movie, for good reason, focuses on Golden Dawn. And I think we have to use the proper term. Neo-Nazi is absolutely wrong. It's Nazi. They're a fascist group, very classically fascist, which Greece has never seen in this way. There have been 2 dictatorships in the 20th century in Greece, but not along classic fascist lines, which is the Golden Dawn. But it's not just Golden Dawn that propagates anti-immigrant beliefs, homophobia, anti-Semitism, racism. And in fact, the climate was created not just by the economic crisis, but even the ruling government called the New Democracy, the center-right party, which is now no longer in power. But they created this anti-immigrant fervor, set up camps, did things. For instance, Samaras, when he ran for office, said, we are tired, we're going to end the occupation of Greece. He wasn't talking about the banks. It was code for their immigrants. And he's the right wing. There are various cultural figures like Theodorakis, Mikis Theodorakis, who has a great history, but is now just spews anti-Semitic statements one after another. So we can't just focus on Golden Dawn. Now they're on trial, and we should all watch that, for the murder of Faisis and also a Pakistani immigrant. We'll see what happens. The first day of their trial, they got a month's adjournment. So I don't know how strong the courts are going to prosecute them. An interesting figure in Greece is that 62% of the people arrested are non-Greeks. And when you see the polls around the Greek police stations and know how the Greek police vote and act, it's no surprise that almost 2/3 of the people they're arresting are immigrants. Now, granted, there are sociological reasons, but the racism is there, and perhaps even as a parliamentary maneuver, Golden Dawn might change their name or move, but we have to really focus on this extreme right-wing group that has been affected by the arrest. And in New York, you can see the effect that they're totally in the closet. Now, when Tsipras came here 2 years ago to speak at CUNY, they showed up. They kind of heckled, and we dealt with them. They showed up at a showing of a movie here in Astoria about the Greek American radical movement, and they were thrown out. But Syriza's spokespeople have come since then, many times. Golden Dawn has not shown their face. So they are clearly on the retreat. We have to keep that going, but we can't lose sight and just simply look at one particular fascist group, as important as that is. But we have to remember that.
I think it's important to keep in mind that not that Golden Dawn is a ploy set forth by the mainstream parties of New Democracy and PASOK, but it's used as a foil. On the one hand, to say, if we don't succeed, if not us, then this is what awaits. And also to deflect attention, because as violent as Golden Dawn has been in Greece, in terms of suffering, in terms of people dying, it is no comparison between the impact of the mainstream governments of PASOK and New Democracy and Golden Dawn. There have been thousands of people who have died because of inadequate medical attention, who have committed suicide because of the economic crisis, who are homeless and are relying upon charities and handouts to eat. And that is incomparable to any damage done by Golden Dawn. So as opposed to them as we are, I think it's important to keep in mind that the liberal mainstream is much more destructive and much more authoritarian and oppressive through other mechanisms, through the market manipulations, than Golden Dawn has been.
The trial was mentioned that's coming up. We've been waiting. Modern Greece has a history of very significant, important trials. After the junta, there were a number of important trials. I mean, is the trial significant, an important event that's coming up? What to expect? What are the conditions under which it's being carried out? I was wondering if anyone wanted to comment further about the trial.
Personally, I'll be surprised if there even is a trial. I mean, there's going to be continuous postponement, and this is a tactic. And to me, what goes on, the fact that these people were even allowed to sit in the parliament, is despicable. I mean, as a Greek, and by the way, I love Greece like a mother loves her children, with all its faults. I go to Greece every year. I find there are certain things that Greece really has to come to terms with, and number one is education. The fact that modern Greek history is not taught in the schools, not all of it's been pleasant. There was the dictatorship, there was the junta, there was the Civil War. You go to the War Museum, it sort of cuts off at the high point and eliminates all the low points. The Holocaust is not taught. When I'm in Yanina, a community that was completely destroyed by the Nazis, and I have a young girl approach me because we're photographing a former Jewish building, and it's now a dance school, and she was going there. And I said to her, do you know what happened to the Jews in your city? 91% were taken. She had no idea. It has to be taught in the schools. And modern Greek history has to be taught. You have to discuss these things. And otherwise, you're going to keep putting out students that will emulate people like Golden Dawn because they don't know better.
Yeah, sure.
Just a little bit about the trial. The trial was adjourned because one of the Golden Dawn criminals did not have a lawyer, which is a pretty strange lack of solidarity among fascist pigs. This is in fact
found a lawyer.
so the trial is resuming on May 7th. And I think, you are absolutely right. The problem with Golden Dawn is that it has links to the police, it has links to the judiciary, and it is absolutely true that this cannot be left up to the courts. To the lawyers who are bringing Golden Dawn to justice, it's a group called Jail Golden Dawn, and they're activists. They are very well aware that the court cannot be relied upon to really finish this, that it's a combination of using, pressure from the streets through the anti-fascist movement, and you obviously, trying to get the court to do its job. But I think that we won't really know how this is going to end up until the trial begins, but there is now a pretty large anti-fascist movement that I think is very substantial, something that didn't exist so much before the murder of Pavlos Fyssas, the hip-hop artist, and I think that's important.
I wanted to ask about the European dimension of this. Nick, you bring up Dublin 2. We've recently had this horrendous increase in immigrants dying, trying to make it into what some people refer to as Fortress Europe. To me, that news has really brought up again this sense of Dublin 2, and is Europe going to recognize that what happens on its borders, whether in Italy or in Greece, is not a concern of that country, but part of the dynamic that they've created or have created a sense of Europe.
Unfortunately, you know that every minute, every hour now is very critical for the Greek government. This coming weekend, again, it is one of the most critical ones about the future of the country. And again, this issue of immigration is not exactly and only a Greek problem. Like the crisis, the economic crisis is not exactly a Greek phenomenon or a Greek problem, but it's a European problem. So this is what Syriza tries to do. This is what the new government tries to do, to redefine the future by going into the past, as Marx argues, right, in the 18th Brumaire, that in order to understand the present and look at the future only in the sense by looking in the past and going in the past and see all these agreements against the people of Greece overall, either in political level or economic level or immigration policies, etc. We have to undo all these issues. Golden Dawn is a problem created by the elites, the 10 families, the 10, 20 families who all these years exploit all domestic investment, all foreign investment. They own everything, the media, the roads, the airports. So it is the same small elites that until the last instance now, they are against the elected Greek government. They replicate, reproduce the same negative aspects against Greece that the Europeans saw. They reproduce also locally, domestically within Greece. I hope that the Greek American community realizes that and therefore support the Greek government, support and try to help Greece as much as they can, and of course be critical of the Golden Dawn. And I want to take the opportunity of what Richard done and ask the Greek American community to have an open dialogue regarding the Golden Dawn here and probably in Greece, because I still believe that Greek Americans are not fundamentally Nazis, but they have to address the issue, and it has to be an open discussion. And I'm very sorry that AHEPA is not here, or the Kyrikas is not here, or the church they're not here. It has to be a public forum, a discussion. And I want to see all these very well-known and active organizations, either they call them Omospondia or AHEPA, to send letters of support to Greece at this moment, to do something which is, obvious and public. We want to see how they support all this love about Greece that they keep saying, and the Greek language and all the pride. Show it now. This is the moment. Thank you, Richard, for doing that.
Yeah, I think the situation in Europe, I think Europe is now returning to the state of, to the kind of brutality that is the normal state of the operation of a capitalist society. I mean, there was a period, I think part of the attraction of the whole idea of the European project was that for a long time, Europe claimed to have an alternative model of capitalism, a sort of more humane capitalism that was based on the welfare state and so on and so forth. And now it seems that this was a temporary moment. And now the practice is a much more brutal one, as manifested both by the treatment of the refugees trying to come to Europe and also the imposition of austerity policies. So if we think about the plight of refugees and immigrants coming from the global south, a big source of the problems in those parts of the world is, of course, the legacy of European colonialism and the uneven development that has always been part of global capitalism. And, of course, the response of European governments is leading to hundreds and hundreds of immigrants and refugees dying in the waters of the Mediterranean. Just as at the same time, the austerity policies imposed by European governments on the European periphery is leading thousands and thousands of people of dying from either killing themselves or from having inadequate health care. So I think Europe is symptomatic of the kind of the brutality that is the normal sort of principle of operation for capitalist societies.
Basically, yes, sort of like going back to what Marcia said and bringing in like what Costas started saying. I think there is a danger here discussing or focusing so much on that relationship between Germany and Greece and the references back to the war. And even though I absolutely agree that, yes, the German government should pay reparations and yes, the German government should be held accountable for a number of issues, there is a danger here of like, which can end up becoming the kind of butter that we don't want on Golden Dawn's bread. And that is falling back to nationalistic discourses that they very easily go to the direction of fascism and Nazi practices. So what is very, very important, and I want to stress what Costa said, is to point out that we are dealing with global neoliberal policies here, for which obviously Germany is responsible, but it's not Germany alone. So it is something I think we should pay attention to.
Let them ask some questions.
Let me, let this go on, but let me open up the questions from the audience. Why don't you go ahead? Either one. Author, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. As Greek Americans, I mean, one of the things that I noticed about the film was the parallels between, and in the discussion was the parallels between what's going on with Golden Dawn and, as you put it at the very beginning, like with the Tea Party. I mean, the Tea Party may not be as overtly violent, but it is sort of a straw man, third party funded by very rich right wingers as a means of sort of driving a wedge into the political discourse and appealing to sort of basest kind of nationalism. And I was wondering if you guys feel that since you see both sides of both the Greek and the American versions of this, is that an accurate analogy, or are there really significant differences?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat the question so that we have it for the video. But the question is about whether there's an analogy between the Tea Party as a more extreme manifestation of the conservative mainstream political party and the relationship between Golden Dawn and the mainstream conservative party in Greece.
Yeah, I think you pointed to a similarity in your question in that it may perform a very similar function in terms of the party politics in each country, and there's, I think, also a deeper similarity in that when you have a moment of things going wrong, one can either blame the system itself, that there are some kinds of defects, contradictions, antinomies to the society itself that have led to this, or you can think of it as something that comes from the outside. Obama, who was smuggled in, a week old from Kenya in some master plan to take over the country on behalf of whatever the communist conspirators or Islamicists. It's much more comforting. It's much easier to present it as a corruption that comes from the outside.
Sure. Go ahead.
There's so much, obviously, to respond to, both in the film and in the discussion right now. But I guess the question that I have is really to what extent is the Greek Jewish community within Greece organizing itself or responding specifically to what's going on?
The Greek Jewish community in Greece now numbers about 4,500. So it's a very, very tiny minority, and unfortunately what has happened in so many instances is most Greeks have never met a Jew, nor would they recognize one in the street because they look just like any other Greek. But they still grow up and are breastfed with quite a bit of anti-Semitism. I love conversations with taxi cab drivers. I mean, that's the elite of any society, you know? So taking a cab from Piraeus one day to Athens, I had a cab driver. And of course, when I speak my Greek, I speak it with a noticeable accent, so he knew that I was not born in Greece. I mentioned I came from New York. He said to me, the Jews are taking over the country. And I wanted to get to my destination, so I didn't tell him I was Jewish, but I said, really, how many Jews? He said, hundreds of thousands. So I met with the president of the Central Board of Jewish Community, who was then David Sotiel, and I said, you know, it's not the first time I heard that. What's going on? He said, shh, we want them to think we're more powerful than we actually are.
We need to thank Richard for doing this, for the film, and for tonight. Thank you very much. One of the benefits of this film was, and you say, where are these guys? They did a whole counter film, Golden Dawn. And what they did is each person here, they went through, publicized their home addresses in Greece, their family connections, all of that. And here, I actually was the most unscathed of all. But there are certain people here who, their brothers, their sisters, and true to Golden Dawn life, they showed family members sideways and said, look at that nose, which, you know, that was supposed to hook nose. And Nenny, when she in the movie talked about that some of us have gotten emails, I'm one of them. And I got an email. I think Nikos got an email. So they found our emails. So while it's very good that they are kind of quiescent right now, I would not go rely on that. Things in Greece are in flux constantly. And what happens in New York depends a lot on what happens in Greece, on the trials, what happens there. They I believe, will emerge more. Right now they're submerged, but I think they will emerge. And the best antidote is to have big meetings to confront that, because they are in Astoria. You might not see them. Talk to them. They're there. I on a personal note, I grew up a couple of blocks from here on 34th Avenue. I went to elementary school on 36th Avenue, junior high school on 36th Avenue. So this is something, you know, people, it's not just, I bring that up, but it's not just people who grew up in Astoria. It's everywhere, and the fascist movement or Tea Party movement is everywhere. But the thing that we need to do, and as valuable as this is have bigger, more open meetings and really confront them. And Nikos' point is very good. A HEPA. Where is a HEPA? Where is the church? Where is the Kyriaks, the Greek publications? They should be here. And for years they had this constant duality. Well, there's Syriza and there's Golden Dawn. Well, Syriza is the governing party. Golden Dawn is on trial for murder. So what does that say about the National Herald's narrative for the last several years? Wrong. Completely wrong. And they need to account for that. There needs to be a repercussion, and they can do it, they can start by sponsoring meetings that you want to build more things like this. But I think the battle's not over, and we should anticipate much more to come. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.